After the last season divided audiences, The Bear returns better than ever, and even though I defended Season 3 wholeheartedly, Season 4 is a satisfying return to form with some of the best payoffs in the entire show's run. Hi, I'm your host Robbie, and on this episode of Atomic Vision, I'm going to break down Season 4 of The Bear, episode by episode. And while Season 3 saw Carmy at his lowest point, constantly making bad decisions left and right, the beauty with The Bear is that despite all the pain and trauma these characters have suffered through, it is never too late to change. Season 4 is about accountability, forgiveness, and how Carmy's true passion isn't cooking. Groundhog sets the stage for everyone's character arcs this season, while cleverly spoiling how the season will end within the first 5 minutes of the episode. It opens with a mysterious dream sequence featuring snow and a ticking countdown right before Sydney's eyes open wide. Although this seems very random at first, this cold open is one of the more important moments this season, but won't be paid off till episode 8. The episode actually begins with a flashback of Carmy cooking in the Berzatto family kitchen with Mikey. As the two chat about Mikey's failed get-rich-quick scheme, Carmy asks if he genuinely cared about losing the rental car business. Mikey admits that he doesn't, because it meant nothing to him in the end. Carmy then talks about why restaurants mean so much to him, as it was the only place of normalcy in their crazy, chaotic life. He emphasizes that when you go out to eat, it's always special because you are being served, and he finds that endearing. Carmy then suggests that he and Mikey should open a restaurant together to give other people the chance to feel special. Throughout the entire show, we have learned that above everything, Carmy loves to serve others, but he still hasn't realized that his passion isn't about serving people with his cooking, but creating special memories that they will never forget. And all of this ties back to Chef Terry's speech from last season.
People don't remember the food, it's the people that they remember.
We then go to the present. Carmy is asleep, clinging the review to his chest as Groundhog Day plays on the TV. The movie is about Bill Murray stuck having to relive the same day forever. And this not only alludes to Carmy being stuck in a depressing loop of unhappiness, but the movie also makes use of a clock counting down as a constant reminder of the loop, which is something that will also happen to the bear this entire season. It is then unveiled that the review the bear received during the last season's cliffhanger was a total mixed bag, calling it good food but terrible service, which is sadly the one thing that Carmy used to be passionate about. At the restaurant, Sydney confronts Carmy and tells him that his desire for dysfunction is self-destructive and isn't motivating at all. And rather than deflecting the blame onto someone else, Carmy takes accountability and accepts that he doesn't like chaos as a driving factor anymore. This is just the beginning of Carmy's apology tour. The show then establishes Richie's arc as he looks at a photo of a Zen garden, setting up a very important conversation later in episode 7. The show then establishes Ibra's arc of retooling the beef sandwich window, and it's extremely satisfying that his journey this season is also one of the most important plot beats of the entire show going forward. Sydney then gets a call from Chef Shapiro, establishing her internal conflict about leaving or staying at the Bear. Since the review was mixed, Unc arrives at the restaurant and has installed a 2-month clock countdown toward the restaurant's closure, unless the business can get out of the red and into the green. Funny enough, Unc compliments the beef window as the only successful part of the business, but when he recites the mixed review from the Tribune, it coincidentally sounds exactly like the negative audience reviews of Season 3 itself.
Confusing and show-offy.
And dissonance.
And dissonance. Tell me, Nicholas, what does that word mean to you personally?
Harmonically
Tina and Richie, who originally both hated being told what to do in past seasons, are now taking the mixed review in stride, admitting that although it's painfully honest, they're willing to do what they can to improve. This season constantly rewards us by showing characters evolve and grow, and it's these little moments that bring me so much joy. Now with a new leadership team hired to reduce workload and create consistency, the restaurant begins to operate like a tight ship instead of an unfocused, constant mess. Soubise opens with Ibra telling Carmy that he feels like he failed the bear by dropping out of culinary school during season 2. Carmy apologizes for not being there for him and says that he's creating many opportunities here at the bear. What Carmy doesn't know is that Ibra's the beef window will be what saves the business. And later on this episode, the window actually sells out of sandwiches before the day even ends. As Richie closes up the bear for the night, Carmy reflects on his mistakes with Richie in an unspoken conversation. And while no words are actually shared, the two have a moment of understanding, especially after everything they've been through. At a nearby bar, Richie watches 3:10 to Yuma, and it offers words of wisdom that are also a core theme of this season.
Squeezing that watch ain't gonna stop time.
Because of bad terms with local farmers, the restaurant is forced to reduce ingredients, but this surprisingly creates more focus in the end. Rather than forcing things to go Carmi's way like in the past, he instead gives in to change and agrees with Sydney that less is more. Carmi uses the reduce and subtract rule positively instead of negatively, and his sudden faith catches Sid off guard. As the group discusses the identities of potential undercover critics, some words of advice are given.
It's almost better that you don't know who they are.
Why is that?
Because you need to treat every guest that walks through your door like they're the chosen one. If you focus on this one guest, that guest is going to know they're getting better treatment.
Tina then talks with Carmi about how current arguments with her husband are messing with her focus, and that can cause you to make bad decisions. Carmi had previously been so focused on being the best last season that he hadn't considered that this was causing him to make bad decisions at work and in life. But now that he's reflecting and changing, he calls Sugar to apologize for not seeing her newborn baby. After adding another apology notch to his belt, Carmi tries to tell Sugar that he was actually at Mikey's funeral, but is cut off when she brings up the memory of dropping him at the airport the day he left. She mentions how he had that spark, and then reiterates that if his passion is gone, that doesn't mean it's lost forever, setting up Carmi's journey going into season 5. And as the bear opens for the day, Carmi notices that Sydney is very fast at serving without breaking a sweat, hinting at his final decision to make her his permanent replacement in the finale. Scallop opens with Sydney cooking in complete harmony, enveloped by color. There's no chaos and no nervousness, just complete peace. A piano version of Slow Disco by St. Vincent plays as she cooks, and the meaning behind it chronicles Sid's journey this season. Slow Disco is about someone stuck in the middle of a crossroad, having to decide if they want to stay with the love of their life or leave because it has become stale. But the way that the song is framed here in this scene suggests that Sid is at peace when working at the Bear, and her heart wants her to stay. As she serves Carmi her newest dish, she expects contradiction as always, but instead, Carmi is blown away, calling it perfect, and Sid is surprised again. Carmi is trying to change, and after what has felt like forever, Sid is happy. We then follow up with Donna, who is now a realtor, and she is very different than how we met her in Fishes or Ice Chips. She is competent, at peace, and happy, showing that even someone as complicated as Donna can grow to be something more. And also, Unc gives some inspiring words to his son about change, moving on, and also this.
Please come out here and kick me in the nuts. I'm begging you.
Ebro meets with the consultant, hoping to create a new opportunity for the Bear and save the business. By reducing workload and work time compared to when the beef was a full-service sandwich shop, Ebro estimates that the window will be in the green in no time. Reduce and subtract in full effect. Meanwhile, a special guest is arriving to dine at the Bear, and since the restaurant is all about serving the guests to their best of their abilities, Richie tells the crew that they will go out of their way to give them a night they'll never forget. Carmi watches Marcus create with elegance and makes note that taking your time can lead to beautiful results. Then Marcus gets a voicemail from his distant dad and talks to Carmi about it, mentioning how guilt can make you feel so alone. For the longest time, Carmi had been carrying around guilt about Mikey, his mother, and about leaving. So in a nice change of pace, Carmi explains that when you work at a restaurant, you are never alone. He then tells Marcus he will do whatever he can to help him with his problems. And this eventually pays off when he hires Luca to help Marcus. When the special guest arrives, Carmi stops Richie from serving them so he can replate the dish to look even more elegant, just like Marcus from earlier. Giving more focus to the guests can make all the difference. And because of this, an undercover food critic thanks Richie for serving those guests with so much energy and happiness. They then treat the special guests to a snowy night in Chicago, creating a memory they'll never forget. The undercover food critic sees it all happen and admires the passion from afar. As Carmi closes up the restaurant and touches the iconic refrigerator door from season 2, he's inspired by his conversation with Marcus and decides to face his guilt head-on by confronting Claire Bear, apologizing for being inconsiderate and cold. He ends up bumping into Ted Fack instead.
I feel like I'm in a Disney Channel original movie, dog.
Wow.
Yeah.
Which one?
Like motocrossed.
That's beautiful.
Carmi confesses that all of the conflicting feelings he's had during his outburst in the fridge had to do with him failing to admit he loved her. But she reminds Carmi that even though he's doing the right thing, that doesn't mean everything is solved in an instant. Healing takes time. And as he walks away, Carmy calls Pete and updates the agreement, making Sydney his official replacement as head chef and part owner of the business. Worms is a slice-of-life episode focusing on Sid contemplating whether she leaves or stays at the Bear. She is seen watching a movie called Jumping Jack Flash, where Whoopi Goldberg has this to say.
Do you want to work here, or do you want to live?
Chef Shapiro calls Sydney about his job offer, and when Sydney says she's busy with a hair appointment, Shapiro belittles it as unimportant. This is one of the many examples of Sydney drifting away from working with Shapiro, because he doesn't really understand her, let alone respect her free time. When she arrives at the new restaurant just to ease Shapiro, the vibe is all off. Shapiro's enthusiasm is fake, forced, and his restaurant ideas, while flashy, shiny, and new, don't match Sydney's vision. Shapiro doesn't truly see her as a partner, he sees her as an exploitable asset. Sid leaves to get her hair done, but when her appointment goes sideways, Sid is left to babysit her hairdresser's kid. TJ asks for Sid's advice about whether she should go to a friend's sleepover, but in actuality, Sid is giving herself advice about Carmy and Shapiro. As the two shop for groceries, TJ makes fun of Sid by bringing up a goofy memory where Sid got sick from eating candy worms. It is very easy to overindulge on a good thing if there isn't any precaution, and while Shapiro's place might sound like the best option compared to the Bear, its sugary and artificial exterior might be a bad choice for Sydney in the end. Back at the house, Sid cooks lunch, and no matter how many examples she gives about the two houses, TJ always chooses the wrong house, so Sid instinctively argues her suggestion. Even though the Bear is messy, crazy, and chaotic, it feels like home. Shapiro's new restaurant feels like work. So do you want to work or do you want to live? TJ jokes that Sid doesn't actually want to leave because she has a crush on Carmy, which is honestly a hilarious inside joke mocking the deleted romance subplot this show almost had. In the end, TJ decides to go to the sleepover, telling Sid that she should work wherever she wants because she's a good cook. But instead of going with her gut, Sid ends up calling Shapiro, ultimately making a bad choice, much like eating sugary worms that will hurt your teeth. Replicants opens with Carmy attending another AA meeting, hearing a story from a woman who left her brother alone for 3 days to take care of her plants. When she returns, the house is a disaster, but her brother is thankfully still alive. The punchline is that even amid her brother's addiction and mischief, he was still responsible enough to water the plants like she had asked, and it makes Carmy smile. Despite experiencing chaos, heartbreak, and stress, happiness was still found. Glass half empty, glass half full. Carmy visits a national landmark for architect Frank Lloyd Wright. Both Carmy and the architect are meticulous artists with distinct visions. But the most important aspect that Carmy admires is that a life was had here. Carmy hasn't truly lived since he became a chef, and now is the time to live. Meanwhile, Sid sees the updated agreement and is afraid to confront the changes made for fear that Carmy's acting out again. So she goes outside to play basketball, using luck to help her decide where she'll work. The funny part is that every time she succeeds, it contradicts her gut instinct to stay at the Bear. Also, Marcus and his best friend decide to sell his late mom's house, signaling that change is not only good, but moving on from bad experiences creates room for healing. And it allows others the chance to create new memories of their own.
I never thought about that.
I know. It's because I'm wise.
And as in series tradition, we see the trademark Bear zoom as Richie has an anxiety episode, afraid he won't be needed as a dad anymore. Tina talks with Carmy about how they need consistency at the restaurant, and by working on the same recipes, it means they can improve their service quickly. She also reiterates that Carmy has nothing to prove anymore.
Just wanted you to hear something out loud.
What's that?
You the baby.
The consultant returns to talk with Ibra about how their downsizing and reducing have actually benefited the window exponentially, but Ibra still doesn't know how to expand their success further. Later on, the consultant suggests that they franchise the beef window.
Expansion through replication.
Just like Tina said about their recipe repetitions. And also, Ibra invents a slogan for the sandwich shop.
I'm loving it.
Well, no, you can't use that. See, that's McDonald's.
Da 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 da.
Yeah, that's McDonald's. I'm loving it.
Eat fresh.
We are then introduced to Marcus's dessert, which will be the defining dish that highlights his talent in a future episode. Carmi apologizes for making Sid go through the pain of season 3 with the menu changes. And Sydney is shocked that they now have a locked and set menu. Yet again, another example of Carmi learning and growing. Unfortunately, Carmi doesn't get to tell Sid about the updated agreement because Sugar arrives to introduce her newborn baby to Uncle Carmi for the first time. Sid then gets a call that her dad is in the hospital after surviving a heart attack. Sophie opens with Sid arriving at the hospital to see her dad and has a panic attack while in the waiting room. Meanwhile, Neil Fack invites his sister Francie to the wedding and Sugar loses her mind about it. I think what makes this subplot so funny is how Sugar is considered the chill Berzado of the bunch, and yet her mysterious beef with Francie makes her lose her just like her siblings.
You have devastated me!
Am I still your boy?
No!
As Carmi preps the crew for tonight's service, Richie finally admits that he's freaked out about Frank becoming Evie's stepdad. Later on, Jess confronts Richie about his stress, pointing out that Frank is likely more afraid of Richie since he'll always be considered the new guy. Meaning Frank will always have to one-up to be in Evie's good graces, while Richie's her actual dad.
Don't look at it like you're left alone.
Okay, how should I look at it?
Like you have help.
And for a small moment, this brings Richie peace. As Tina and Marcus talk about Sid's dad, T mentions how when anything bad happens, that is when the timer starts. The countdown to closure haunts this crew this season, but even outside of the restaurant, life always finds a way to create new forms of stress. Claire Bear, who works at the hospital, consoles Sydney and tells her her dad will be okay. But Sydney breaks down into tears, and she feels immense guilt for making him worry. Claire mentions that worrying about others shows you care. This is something that the Berzados had all repressed for so long, but are now beginning to open up to. Richie calls Tiff and tries to clear the air about his struggles, but is left with her voicemail, and because of this, his stress returns. The timer starts again. Sid calls Carmi to let him know that her dad is okay, and Carmi reminds her that he'll always be there whenever she needs him. These two have been through a lot by now, but no matter what has happened, nothing has truly gotten in the way to disrupt their relationship. But right after they say their goodbyes, Chef Shapiro calls Carmi, and that is when he learns that Sid has been mulling over her job offer for weeks now. Sid's dad wakes up, and before she can even have a chance to panic, her dad lets her know that this isn't her fault. Life happens, and sometimes we take on guilt that isn't ours to have. This is a reoccurring theme for the whole show, and it's beautiful seeing Sydney healthily deal with her stress by letting it go. The rest of the Bear family leaves Sid a heartwarming message as just another reminder that this isn't just a job, it's a family. When Sugar and Carmi talk, he admits that he doesn't want to hide from his problems anymore. They both agree that fear of resentment has fueled their drive, but it is unhealthy, and neither wants to be like this anymore. As Richie preps his service speech, Fat catches that an undercover critic has been to the restaurant multiple times and will return for another dining experience. This is when Richie realizes what should be the restaurant's motivation and is now able to finish his speech with confidence.
Every guest is family.
Bears is my favorite episode of the season as it is the polar opposite redux of Fishes from season 2. Rather than being fueled with anxiety, anger, and repression, this is one of the most peaceful episodes in the entire show where everything goes absolutely right. Once at the wedding, cousin Michelle returns from Fishes, and when she meets with Donna, she unintentionally asks the same frustrating question that has made Donna explode frequently. But since Donna has changed for the better, she doesn't let it affect her, showing growth. Claire Bear and cousin Stevie talk with Frank about the Berzados, letting him know that this family is maybe a tad dysfunctional.
I think maybe you should have told him, like, the direct truth.
That he's
I mean, maybe.
But in a great twist, no chaos occurs this episode. As Carmi begins to panic about the review, mixing it with his fear of family get-togethers, his mother Donna arrives to say hello. This is the first time they have seen each other since Fishes, so Carmi is overwhelmed, unfocused, and scared. Rather than confronting his mom about their history, he panics and runs away. Although Carmi is changing for the better, it's still a work in progress. Frank then asks Richie to help because Evie's afraid to do the father-daughter dance at the wedding. As they chat, Frank admits that he's afraid of being a terrible stepdad, and finally, Richie's fears completely go away, knowing he isn't alone in his fear of fatherhood. Carmi hides from his mom and bumps into Uncle Lee, who we haven't seen since Fishes. Lee reveals that since that Christmas, he had made amends and was actually close friends with Mikey till the very end, and all they ever talked about was Carmi. Lee even defends Donna, reminding Carmi that he isn't the only one in pain. Donna and Carmi are one and the same, both experiencing pain and having a hard time moving on. But Uncle Lee compliments Carmi for leaving because breaking patterns breaks patterns. Carmi and Donna are slowly breaking their Groundhog Day loop. Sid and Donna talk about the work environment in the restaurant, and they kinda lampoon the loud nature of the show in a very meta way.
It's so loud.
And people just shut the up.
Yeah.
Donna reflects that work families are closer than your family, for Sid to reply that it's all one big family in the end. Donna is meant to represent what happens when you push people away, and neither Sid nor Carmi want to be like that. Sid then tells Carmi that her chat with Donna was completely normal, and Carmi realizes that if Donna really can be capable of change, then he can too. As Frank and Richie fail to motivate Evie, everyone decides to get under the table to help her become brave, where they each reveal a fear to normalize the conversation. Tiff's, Sid's, and Carmi's fears are the entire point of the season.
I am afraid of losing people that I love.
I'm afraid of failing. I think of messing stuff up. That's scary to me.
It's like the opposite of chaos.
Peace.
Ted then tells Neil that he's in love with his girlfriend, and although this seems very random, the show is talking about no longer repressing your feelings. He then tells her, and the two are very happy. Had Carmi done this with Claire from the beginning, who knows how different things would be. We then literally cut to Carmi and Claire reconnecting. Carmi isn't afraid to be honest about his pain anymore, and when she asks if he's scared about being vulnerable right now, he says no. Unc and Richie chat about the Zen garden teased in episode 1. Richie explains that the rocks in the Zen garden are meant to represent families, and no matter how spread apart the rocks are, the sand is what connects them, so they are never alone. Richie says that it brought him peace because he finally realized he isn't one of the rocks, he is the sand. Rather than letting his fears push people away, Richie has learned to grow and accept change, and that has brought him closer to everyone. Tiff dances with Unc, and she admits that when she and Richie had their divorce, she was afraid of losing the Berzados, as they are the only family she has left. Unc explains that once you become a bear, you are a bear forever. The show has always been about being there for each other, no matter what, and even when things get hard, we conquer them together. And with Carmi set to leave the bear next season, it doesn't mean he's gone forever too. He will always be family. No longer afraid and inspired by her loved ones, Evie finally dances with Frank. And when Richie goes home, he gets the group photo text from Ted and is happy knowing he isn't alone anymore. He is the sand. Green opens with a callback to season 1's finale, where we see a fake cooking show, this time starring Sydney. And as the dream evolves, it becomes a chaotic nightmare. Sid fears that she will become a disappointment and let everyone down with her final decision. Then we finally pay off the cold open from this season. Sydney runs off the stage and out of the building, hoping to run away from her nightmare, but she is actually running in place, stuck in a loop, unable to escape her choice. She then wakes up, knowing what she must do. The show then cuts to the song I Got You Babe, from the movie Groundhog Day. Sydney has broken out of her loop. Sydney then calls Shapiro and tells him that she is staying at the bear, and rather than taking it graciously, Shapiro insults Sydney for making an idiotic decision, showing his true colors. Sydney ultimately made the right choice. Marcus then gets another text from his dad, and is still afraid to meet with him, so when he heads to the diner, he hesitates, panics, and then runs away. Sheena explains to Luca that she's still unable to beat the clock with her prepping, so Luca talks about how pressure can make you overcomplicate things. So what happens when you no longer have pressure to drive you forward? Are you able to work more peacefully without a countdown in your head?
I mean, I guess not, because I'm back here, working for Carmi again, so...
Carmi then teaches Sid how to see her cooking better, and while it does seem inconsequential, it shows how his true passion is to serve others rather than to create. Not with yelling, but with peace. Sugar asks Carmi to get a photo book from Donna, and since Sid is fully capable of handling the kitchen on her own, Carmi is now forced to confront his mother in her home, where all of his trauma stems from. No more running, taking fear and stress head on. Marcus talks with Luca about how he ran away from his meeting with his dad, and Luca mentions that his returning to Chicago was to confront his problems, not to run away from them. Marcus suggests that if your life feels like a mess, then maybe your work does too. But Luca says that their cooking tastes the way it does because of the mess they've worked through. It's all about perseverance. Carmy goes to meet with Donna, but calls Claire first. She mentions how one of the last times they all hung out was at Donna's home. Although the conversation feels like it was meaningless, Claire calls back to say how proud she is of Carmy for going home. Carmy admits that she is wonderful and no longer afraid about being honest with his love. We immediately cut to Jess reassuring Richie that honesty is sanity, so Richie admits that he was happy that Carmy came back home, because he thought he was ashamed of him. And as Carmy and Claire's love evolves, Jess and Richie's relationship evolves into something more too. Computer talks with Sugar about the debt, and reveals that the restaurant is borderline profitable. But why should they keep going? Sugar then sees all the photos of the Bear family and smiles. Tonnato opens with Carmy finally confronting his greatest fear and meeting with his mom. Carmy walks into the iconic dining room where he remembers all of the good and bad times he had in here, staring at where Mikey used to sit. As he reconnects with his mom over some old photos, they then see a picture of Mikey, and finally, these two characters talk about their relationship struggles. Donna apologizes for everything, taking accountability for her actions, and for the first time in the entire show, Carmy cries. Time has been portrayed as an antagonistic force all season long, but in this moment, we are reminded that time heals all wounds. Donna asks if she can be a part of Carmy's life again, and it is everything he's always needed to hear. This is the biggest payoff and character arc of the entire show, and for what has felt like forever, Carmy feels peace and decides to cook for his mother, serving with love. The consultant suggests that the beef window should expand to multiple locations. When Computer hears this idea, he has an epiphany and tells Unc everything. Rather than working to beat the clock, T is asked to prep without knowing she's even being tested, and she aces it flawlessly. Turns out that the pressure in her head was driving her to be worse, when in reality, no fear means no worries. As Carmy revisits his old bedroom, remembering all of the great moments in his life, Save It for Later by Eddie Vedder plays in the background. The song is about emotional hesitation and the struggle between running away and confronting your feelings, which has been Carmy's struggle this entire time. Funny enough, the song was played 3 times in Season 3, and now that it has returned once more, its 4th time played is in Season 4. Sugar gets a call from the undercover critic who dined at the Bear, and is told that they not only had a wonderful time, but that Marcus is getting a shout out in an article about the best new chefs thanks to his dessert dish he made. Carmy comes back to the Bear and tells Richie he had seen Donna and was happy. Much like in episode 2, they share an unspoken conversation again, and they have an understanding. This time though, their emotions are the polar opposite, peace instead of stress. As the crew preps for what could be the final night of the Bear, Pete calls Sid to tell her about the updated agreement and how Carmy is quitting the business and making her head chef and part owner. Goodbye is a bottle episode exclusively filmed outside the restaurant as Sid, Carmy, and Richie confront each other about all of their secrets. This is the only episode that is chaotic, aggressive, and akin to the first 2 seasons of the show, breaking away from the norm of peace this season. Sid is furious that Carmy is leaving, but he argues that he's become a burden for others instead of working on himself. He prioritized his craft over his health, and it has destroyed his life and those around him. Carmy admits that Sydney is everything he'll never be, and that his decision to leave isn't to run away from his problems, but to prop Sydney up for better success. It is about serving Sydney and the restaurant in the only healthy way he knows how.
I believe in you more than I've ever believed in myself. Why? Because you're the Bear.
But Sid is scared, thinking that if he leaves, he'll abandon her like he did with Mikey, Richie, and Sugar. Although Carmy has changed for the better this season, it doesn't automatically wipe away all of his past mistakes, so now he's dealing with the consequences of distrust. Richie enters and learns that Carmy is not only leaving, but he was at Mikey's funeral, his very last secret. Richie thinks this is Carmy trying to instigate a fight, but this is once again Carmy trying to be sincere. He admits that he was ashamed that he couldn't go to the funeral, and he clears the air about how he mishandled his trauma. But worst of all, for how inconsiderate he's been, having never acknowledged that others were grieving too. Richie admits that he feels responsible for Mikey's death, and he believed Carmy didn't go to the funeral because he thought it was his fault. Even though Richie isn't actually family, Carmy says he's better than family. The 3 stop fighting, and Richie admits he loves Carmy more than anything. Carmy feels that he has no life outside the kitchen, and that's why he has to go. Sydney promises to stay as head chef as long as Richie is added to the agreement, making him part owner as well, and Carmy accepts without hesitation. Richie accepts and says it's an honor. The three then ponder how to save the restaurant, just as the countdown ends at 0. The Bears Season 4 can be summed up by the Groundhog Day quote from Episode 1.
Some guys would look at this glass and they would say, that glass is half empty. Other guys would say, that glass is half full.
And for the longest time, Carmy only saw the world under immense pressure with no time for love, for family, or life. But Season 4 showcases that this world is far larger than just Carmy, and the only person holding himself back from experiencing this joy is himself. Since the beginning of the show, Carmy's greatest gift has never been about his cooking, but the guidance he's given to everyone around him. His passion is what fueled Marcus to become a pastry chef, and now he's featured in a Best New Chefs list. Tina went from being aggressively defensive to loving and understanding. Gary went from a sandwich maker to a sommelier. Ibra is now a businessman about to save the entire restaurant from shutting down. Richie's journey has been insane, going from a sloppy off to a beloved father, co-parent, and best friend. And Sydney's contributions, which were inspired by Carmy, have saved the restaurant 10 times over. And as the crew heads off into uncharted territory in Season 5, we are left with the tease that their moment of peace is finally coming soon. In the closing minutes of the show, as we watch the timer count down to 0, St. Vincent's song, Slow Disco, returns. And it is the very song that Sydney was cooking to in Episode 3, enveloped in peace and color. Now that Sydney and Carmy have made their choices, no longer afraid, the song is meant to reflect that the future of the bear is brighter than ever before.
I love this place, and I love you all, and 45 to service.
Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this episode of Atomic Vision, leave a like, subscribe for more, and I'll see you next time.
Let's go, boys.
Ted, go away.
Go Cubs.
What does he do here? You know, I'm not sure.
Suck my balls! He made you a great offer. Go suck his balls.